Police and residents are encouraged to come together just days after 2 officers were shot in San Diego's South Crest neighborhood. This year's National Night Out comes amid heightened racial tensions between communities of color and police departments across the nation. And the homeless population in North County is growing faster than anywhere else in San Diego County. But as one shelter opens in Vista today, another is threatened with closure.
We're going to now inhale above the water and exhale underneath the water.
It's one of summer's quintessential activities, but half of Americans can't do it. One of San Diego's best swimmers is actually coming together to help change that. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Funeral arrangements for slain San Diego police officer Jonathan de Guzman are scheduled to begin Thursday, with a funeral mass in Bonita followed by a public memorial service for law enforcement in the community on Friday in El Cajon. De Guzman and fellow officer Wade Irwin were shot last Thursday night in a traffic stop in the South Crest neighborhood. Irwin is recovering from his injuries. Fundraising efforts continue for both Irwin and De Guzman's families. Today, the San Diego City Council approved a proposal to reform the Citizens Police Review Board. Now the measure will go to voters in November. If passed, the board will have its own attorney. Currently, the board works with an attorney selected by the city attorney, and Councilwoman Marty Emerald says the proposed changes are a step in the right direction.
I believe there is a conflict of interest because the city attorney defends the city, and the city attorney appoints an attorney to work with the CRB, and so there is a conflict there. So I believe that having an independent attorney is very important.
The proposed reform will also include a name change. It will be called the Community Review Board to be more inclusive. California voters will decide in November whether to legalize recreational marijuana, and voters in San Diego will be deciding whether to place a special tax on that marijuana. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more.
San Diego voters will decide on a so-called cannabis business tax. It would levy a 5% tax on the sales of non-medical pot. That is, if and only if California voters pass Proposition 64, which would legalize adult use of marijuana. Councilman Mark Kersey says he opposes marijuana legalization, but polls are showing it's likely to pass in California, and San Diego has to be prepared.
We know our costs are going to go up. We're going to have increased medical calls. We're going to have increased law enforcement issues, increased code enforcement issues, and the state will not provide us the resources that we need to deal with any of that.
The business tax needs a simple majority to pass, and the money would go into the city's general fund. The council also okayed for the November ballot a measure to make it easier to remove public officials from office. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Just days after a San Diego police officer was shot to death and another wounded in a southeastern neighborhood, a national event this week is encouraging residents to connect to cops in their community. KPBS reporter Taryn Minto tells us how organizers are preparing for this event.
The event is a national demonstration against crime and a relationship-building opportunity for officers and the citizens they swear to protect. Observations will take place across the city, including at Officer Jeremy Henwood Memorial Park on Fairmount Avenue and in Colina del Sol Park on Orange Avenue. Portia Dawson is Director of Programs and Partnerships for Star Pale, San Diego Police Department's youth-focused nonprofit program that's helping to organize the event at the Colina Park. Dawson says it provides positive interactions with police for the diverse City Heights community that includes many refugees.
And so most people are afraid of the police, period. Because it comes from a place where the police are not your friends. Well, our job is to make the kids know that this is the place you come for help.
National Night Out comes after a series of violent incidents and rallies last month that highlighted racial tensions between communities of color and police departments across the country. And just last week in San Diego, Officer Jonathan de Guzman was killed and Officer Wade Irwin was wounded in a shooting in South Crest. Sydney Michael of the nonprofit City Heights Community Development Corporation says the recent events underscored the significance of building a connection between residents and law enforcement.
That's why it's important that folks come out, to show their support. because both sides are losing, and they shouldn't lose. Both sides should be working together.
The Colina del Sol Park celebration begins at 3. The event at Officer Jeremy Henwood Park begins at 4. Both events will end with a walk around the community. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
North County is opening another year-round homeless shelter today. This one is for families and single women. But KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says as one shelter opens, another is threatened to close next week.
Homelessness is growing faster in North County than anywhere else in San Diego County. The most recent point-in-time count at the end of last year showed an increase in homelessness of 38% in coastal cities from the year before and 26% in inland North County. That's compared to just an 8% decrease in homelessness in the city of San Diego. Operation Hope has been running a winter shelter in Vista for women and children for more than a decade. Now, finally, they've raised enough money, about $700,000, mostly from private sources, to keep their campus open year-round. That does not mean the families stay there year-round. They stay for just a few months and get the help they need to stabilize and move on. Last winter, more than half the 50 beds were filled with children. And starting today, they'll be available for families who need help at any time of the year. Ironically, though, another organization that works with homeless in North County, Solutions for Change, which is also located in Vista, is faced with possibly having to close its emergency shelter for women and children because of a change in federal funding. Solutions for Change is trying to find private money to replace about $90,000. More than 20% of the homeless in San Diego report that they are employed. They simply cannot find a place they can afford to live. For KPBS, I'm Allison St. John.
2 wildfires in California have forced hundreds to evacuate their homes. The fires threatened the Fresno and Monterey counties. Firefighters say several of the 400 evacuated homes in Fresno were damaged by the blaze. The fire in Monterey has destroyed 57 homes, and officials say it has reached the size of the city of San Francisco. Firefighters report the wildfires are less than 20% contained. Officials have issued a travel warning for a Zika-stricken part of Miami. The number of people infected through the mosquito bites in the Windland Arts District has climbed to 14. The Center for Disease Control says pregnant women should avoid the area and get tested for the virus if they have visited the neighborhood since June. The CDC is sending an emergency response team to Miami to help fight this outbreak. The Olympics in Rio de Janeiro are nearly here, and today Olympic officials inaugurated the traditional truce wall at the Olympic Village. The Olympic truce wall has been a fixture since the 2000 Sydney Games. It celebrates an ancient Greek tradition to halt any conflicts to give way for peaceful Olympic Games. Athletes traditionally sign the wall to show support. And with tourists flocking to Rio for the Olympics, most will likely swim in the city's famous beaches. Associated Press reporter Luke Sheridan explains experts found many of those beaches have dangerously high levels of bacteria.
Nearly 500,000 tourists are expected to descend on Rio de Janeiro for the Olympic Games, which begin this week. And when they're not watching the competitions, many will hit the world-famous beaches.
If there's a pollution problem, it would be good for tourists to have information about it. But when you look at the water, it looks pretty.
But looks can be deceiving. The latest findings in a 16-month investigation by the Associated Press show that Ipanema and Copacabana are heavily polluted with viruses from human sewage.
We would never see anything close to this level of viruses in Florida.
Valerie Harwood from the University of Southern Florida reviewed the AP's findings.
It definitely is not of the type of water quality where you would want to take your family to the beach necessarily or be exposed long term to that water.
The beaches even violate Rio's own standards, which consider water to be polluted if it contains more than 2,500 fecal coliforms in 100 milliliters of water, which is about half a cup. Andre Correa, Rio's environmental secretary, says he's swum in the waters and he says they're fine.
Can you swim at the bay where the sailing competition is going to take place? Yes, you can. I did a dive there. Nature keeps renewing the water.
But water quality experts say locals, like Correa, have developed immunities to the viruses.
Nearly 100% of the people that contact the water will get infected, but getting sick will only happen to some of them, depending on their immunity level.
For visitors who are not immune, the potential for illness is real.
What they're really at the risk of is gastroenteritis, so for the most part, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea.
Professor Harwood says beachgoers need to be cautious.
I would say don't let your kids eat the sand and don't put your head underwater.
Luke Sheridan, The Associated Press.
A new report reveals a surprising number of Californians live without internet access. A recent statewide poll shows just about a handful of low-income Californians have broadband. More than half of the residents who make less than $22,000 per year can get online at home.
We still have to find ways to connect those who can't afford it to the internet, not because it just benefits them, but because it benefits all of us. It benefits society as a whole if everybody's connected. If all high school students have access to the internet, all high school students' academic performance is going to improve. If job seekers have access to the internet, all job seekers are going to be able to find jobs more quickly and more easily.
The poll also found that many Californians over the age of 65 and Spanish-speaking Latinos don't have broadband internet access. A new plan announced by California's Energy Commission may turn cars into the state's newest source of energy. The commission is funding a new pilot program to test the piezoelectric technology. It involves embedding special sensors in the pavement of the road or highway. The sensors transform the vibrations of the vehicle into electric pulses.
So the energy output is astounding. They tell us that 1.5 mile stretch of 2-lane highway can power 1,000 homes. So if you think about this, you imagine putting this underneath some of our most congested corridors where a lot of trucks drive through. The amount of power that could be produced is actually pretty high.
The pilot program is set to launch early next year. San Diego County waterways are safer today than they were a decade ago. As part of our News in Numbers series, iNews Source reporter Chris Young says boating accidents have dropped significantly over the past 10 years.
Data from California's Division of Boating and Waterways show accidents on the ocean and in county bays and lakes fell by more than a third, from 87 in 2005 to 55 last year. Accidents spiked more than a decade ago as the popularity of jet skis and other personal watercraft exploded. But those accidents are less common today.
Through education, signage, and enforcement, we have taken a bite out of those numbers and really tried to decrease the number of accidents we see out here.
There could be another explanation for the decline. The number of registered boats in San Diego County has fallen over the last several years, from more than 61,000 in 2008 to less than 57,000 last year. Overall, 742 boating accidents were reported in the county from 2005 to 2015, resulting in 469 injuries and 27 deaths. The most common accident involved collisions between boats. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source reporter Chris Young.
All aboard. The Maritime Museum of San Diego's own San Salvador is set to begin its maiden voyage over Labor Day weekend. The ship is a full-scale replica of the vessel Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo used to discover San Diego Bay in 1542. The 2-month trip up California's coast is open to the public for a cost of $995 per person. The ship is set to sail to coincide with the museum's annual Festival of Sail. Elevated surf and strong rip currents prompted a beach hazard in San Diego today. The warnings are set to expire tonight. Molly Cochran says weather will remain warm and dry this week, and she has more on tonight's KPBS Weather Report.
Well, much of California is staying dry as we head into the rest of this week, but the interior sections, we're starting to notice some changes, especially for the Four Corners. Monsoonal moisture returns into the region. Daily afternoon thunderstorms quite possible, flash flooding a concern, as well as gusty winds. Now, typically between the months of July and September is when we are likely to see that monsoonal moisture return into the interior sections of the Southwest. But at the coast, it's pretty dry, an increase in cloud cover coming in late tonight, that overnight low at 69 degrees. Elsewhere, temperatures generally going to be staying in the mid-60s, lower 60s, and also into the 50s for the higher elevations of our viewing area. Now into Tuesday, we are going to be watching that monsoonal moisture make its return, really going to be packing a punch across the region in the way of some steadier severe rain and the potential for some flash flooding. That will include near Flagstaff and into Phoenix. So if you have any upcoming plans, maybe to travel into Arizona near Phoenix, really want to be paying attention. But as we can see here at the coast and much of California, staying rather quiet and sunny. That will include San Diego by the afternoon. And you know the drill here. We'll start out each day with some low clouds, the potential for some fog. Sunshine, though, for Tuesday afternoon, those daytime highs in the upper 70s. And that's really the case into the middle to later half of this week. 77 by Friday, still quite nice and comfortable, and some sunshine back out for the afternoon. In the interior sections, our daytime highs will stay in the mid to upper 80s, low clouds to start things off, and then the sunshine out for the afternoon. Overnight lows generally in the lower to mid 60s. For the mountains, our daytime high coming in at 81 on Tuesday, partly sunny skies. Feeling a little bit more humid, though, as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. Mostly sunny by Friday with that daytime high coming in at 82 degrees. For the desert, we'll have some sunshine. Temperatures in the triple digits for Tuesday, Wednesday, into the later half of the week as well. Lots of sunshine, but one thing that is pretty noteworthy, by Thursday, we're feeling a little less humid, and our overnight lows generally stay in the 70s, but once we head into Thursday, Friday, we'll allow those temperatures to come back down into the 60s for the overnight hours. So a nice little dry pattern taking shape as we head into the rest of the week. Molly Cochran, KPBS News.
Swimming is an activity that people of all ages can enjoy. Even so, the Red Cross says more than half of Americans either can't swim or don't swim well enough to be safe in the water. That's where U.S. Masters Swimming comes in. The nonprofit group believes teaching adults how to swim saves lives. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg caught up with one of the coaches in La Jolla who's helping adults get their feet wet.
You want me totally in the water?
Rex Azinge used to love to swim as a kid, but now at the age of 39, he has to summon up all his courage just to get in the water. One day when he was 21, Azinge was horsing around a pool with some friends.
Somebody pushed me and I panicked, and I went all the way to the bottom and hit my head, and then before I came up, and ever since then I've just been scared and tensed up whenever I get in the water.
The problem is, Azinge is a petty officer first class in the Navy, and if he wants to advance in his career, he needs to get comfortable in the water. So Azinge has come to this pool in La Jolla to learn how to swim all over again. Azinge gets in the shallow end of the pool and puts on a flotation belt. Then swim coach Chris Hawley takes him through the paces.
Yeah, one arm over another, straight up, elbows at the biceps, elbows locked.
Hawley was a competitive swimmer in high school and college. A few years ago, he started training for triathlons. At an open water swim group, Hawley noticed that most of his fellow triathletes looked like they had learned how to swim from reading a book.
Everybody was very analytical, and they had a lot of kind of hang-ups instead of being nice and fluid in the water. So I happened to see an adult learn to swim certification course come through my email through U.S. Masters Swimming, and I thought, you know, I got to jump on this.
Hawley got his certification and eventually found his calling, giving private lessons to adults who want to learn how to swim. He says the key to teaching adults is to get them to relax.
And I always tell them, you know, just like Bruce Lee said, be like water. The more relaxed that you are in the water, the more you're going to move and feel better, and you're going to stay afloat.
That may have worked for Bruce Lee, but it's not easy to do. So Hawley starts his students out with the basics. They stand in the shallow end of the pool and grab onto the side.
We're going to now inhale above the water and exhale underneath the water. 4, 5.
U.S. Masters Swimming representative Misty Hyman started swimming competitively when she was 5 and won a gold medal in the 200-meter butterfly in the 2000 Olympics. These days, Hyman is the senior assistant coach for the Arizona State University swim team.
A lot of focus is placed on teaching young kids to swim and preventing drowning, which I think is so important. But I think the people that grow up and maybe haven't learned to swim, they slip through the cracks and they don't know that there are resources available to help them.
Chris Hawley says in as few as 6 lessons, he can take someone who's deathly afraid of the water and teach them to swim across the deep end of a pool.
I had a lady recently do that, and when she got across to the other side, she looks, she goes, I'm proud of myself, my family would be proud of myself, because she's the only one in her family who learned to swim. And she started to cry a little bit. And as an instructor, that's really what it's all about. You have just impacted their life for the rest of their life.
The Centers for Disease Control says every day in the U.S., 10 people drown. One student at a time. Hawley is trying to make a dent in that statistic. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. The November general election could cost the city of San Diego as much as $5.5 million, well above what's in the budget. The San Diego city clerk says that's because of a large number of ballot measures. The city council has voted to place 6 propositions on the San Diego general election ballot. The 8-year-old boy who was named honorary Marine in Camp Pendleton on Saturday died yesterday. Wyatt Gillette's father says his son suffered a rare genetic development disorder that causes seizures and kidney failure. Gillette serves as a drill sergeant at Camp Pendleton. He petitioned for Wyatt to become an honorary Marine last month. The honor is bestowed on just a few people every year and recognizes civilians who have made extraordinary contributions to the Marine Corps.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. Demographic challenges facing a rising China finding its footing on the world stage. That's Monday on the PBS News Hour.
A nonprofit organization is climbing and cloning the world's oldest and largest trees in a bid to help combat climate change. AP reporter Terry Chi has the story.
Here in California's Sierra Nevada mountains, these climbers are on a mission, scaling one of the world's oldest and largest trees. But they have loftier goals than just reaching the top. They're here to collect young branches and use them to clone this giant sequoia.
Climber online!
The expedition was organized by the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive. The group believes planting forests of clone champion trees will help combat global warming.
We're trying to hurry here at the 11th hour, the 59th minute, and gather the genetics of the largest and oldest living sequoias and archive those to be utilized.
Giant sequoias can grow up to 300 feet high and 25 feet wide, making them ideal for storing carbon. They can live up to 3,000 years, surviving wildfires, droughts, and disease.
So we feel like that may be something special in those genetics that could help resist the changes of climate change, global warming, things like that.
What we have here are the clippings that we took from the very top of the sequoia tree at 230 feet. And we went out to the very tips of the limbs and harvested this material.
Jim Clark takes the clippings to Archangel's Michigan lab, where they snip the shoots and plant them in nutrient-rich containers. Despite the tightly controlled conditions, most won't survive. But the ones that take root grow indoors for several years before they're ready to plant.
The genetics don't change. This little tiny tree will be exactly the same genetically as the mother tree.
Archangel says they've cloned 170 species and planted 300,000 clones around the world.
The replanting of trees, major trees, is absolutely crucial as one of the constituent parts to mediating the impact of climate change.
But skeptics question whether these ancient trees are genetically superior or just lucky they didn't get cut down. They also doubt planting a limited number of trees will cool the warming planet.
The pace at which climate is changing right now is faster than any time in past Earth history. And so we have to be thinking about very rapid solution. And a slow-growing tree may not be able to keep up with the pace at which the Earth is changing right now.
But there's no disagreement over the value of planting and protecting big trees. And for these arborists, doing nothing is not an option. Terry Che, Associated Press, Camp Nelson, California.
And check out this daredevil. Skydiver Luke Akins became the first person to skydive without a parachute and survive. He executed the dangerous stunt over the weekend. Akins landed safely on a 100 by 100 foot net after falling 25,000 feet from a plane.
I've been training this for 2 years. My whole life's been dedicated to skydiving and pushing the boundaries.
He fell for about 2 minutes and then flipped before safely landing on a net. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow. From the KPBS newsroom, on Morning Edition, we take a look at why the number of kindergartners without vaccines has dropped for the second year in a row in San Diego County, and why that number is expected to continue to go down. And on Midday Edition, money, power, politics. What could possibly go wrong? We'll speak to a campaign finance attorney about the tangled web of financial law, campaign law. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find more on tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.